Yo, what's checking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Monday Overreaction Show. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That beautiful gentleman over there is Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid. Like this video. Hit that thumbs up button. Smash that follow, subscribe button if you haven't already done that. Tell your mom and your friends and your dad and anybody that you think also might want to hit the subscribe button and maybe some thumbs up as well. This video brought to you by RogueShop.com. Use that promo code Orangebloods. That's what Anwar and I do. Texas is home for legal CBD, THC, and so much more. If you got something that needs addressing, Rogue Shop can address it for you. Anwar, we're a couple of days.
Valentine's Day is right around the corner.
Absolutely. You know what? That's exactly we got to get with Richard this week and say, hey, the rest of this week, put some Valentine's Day goodie stuff together like you did for Christmas.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the week, it'll be about that Valentine's Day promo all the way up until he can't get it to you by Valentine's Day anymore. So, Anwar, as I was saying, we are a couple of days away from the second National Signing Day. It doesn't figure to be a super exciting moment in time. It's, I wonder if there's a Steve Sarkeesian press conference, if there's more of a reflection from what they'll have had, like 16 guys already on campus. So, the conversation, I think, weirdly shifts for the second signing day, and it really becomes about the guys you already have and tell us about how they're doing. But you've got TCU safety commit Warren Roberson on campus. You've got who I've got ranked 31st in the state. I think he's a really good player. Everybody's waiting to see what five-star tight end Douche Robinson does. And beyond that, like I said, it's really about reflection from 30,000 feet up about what you've done over the course of both of the signing day windows.
Yeah, because Ketch, I checked in. Sarkeesian will have a press conference on Wednesday. I'm told it's probably going to be like mid-morning at some point. But to your point of like doing the roll call of things, last year around this time, Ketch, it was all about one guy, DJ Campbell. And that was it. And then we were just waiting for that to be official. And everyone knew where that was heading and trending, but it was just DJ. And then there was nothing else. That just put a ribbon and bow on wow, this is a great offensive line class. And now like you said, we're waiting on what happens with those two guys. I don't think even if it does, either way, I don't think it changes the narrative of the recruiting success that Sarkeesian has had. I don't think it's going to change. We're not going to say if Robertson stays with TCU, you're not going to say, oh man, well Sarkeesian screwed that up. To your point, it will still be a reflection on what they have. We'll probably talk about off-season workouts, and it'll probably end up being more of a check-in than anything else. Because even if he gets one of those guys, whether it's Deuce or Robertson, there's only so much you're going to say about, a tight end or a guy that, like you said, a top 30 guy. Like, there's only so many questions.
It's a program conversation, which I think has a chance to be pretty enlightening if the people, this will be one of our last chances to get Sark sitting down in a chair, 30 minutes, ask him about kind of whatever you want to ask him about, but we're not going to get it again for a while. And what he may give us in spring football may be some stuff after practice, but you take nothing for granted. So I think tomorrow's a really interesting day to kind of get all of the things that are rolling around in your head on a daily basis about this Texas. If you want to ask them hey, there's some thought that you guys want to go get an edge player. Can you talk about where the position is right now? Like, who are you guys counting on in the spring? And is that a position you'll keep an eye on in the portal? All these questions can be asked in ways that you won't be able to ask them again for a long time. So I'm looking forward to Wednesday. It's almost, thank goodness for Warren Roberson, because if he flips, it really gives there's a real reason, I suppose, for there to be a get together. But if there wasn't, if he said, I'm not going to meet today, guys, there's nothing really to discuss, we would get where he's coming from, even if it wouldn't look necessarily. I don't think it would be the best decision. But like I said, I don't take Wednesday for granted. This opportunity to really wipe the deck and have a chance to ask him kind of anything that you couldn't ask him during the season, right? Like there are just some things that aren't either Monday during the season or Saturday after a game the best time to ask, because he's not always in the best mood to be like, I'm not going to talk about can't ask him about the portal during, the Monday of a game week, really, because he's going to tell you he's focused on the game, or he's going to give you a little bit of a jaded, cloudy answer depending on just how open he wants to be. Wednesday is a chance for reflection, and I'm kind of interested to see where his mindset is with a number of different things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would give us an opportunity, Catch, to maybe ask him about an A.D. Mitchell, kind of a guy that they recently were able to acquire, and just kind of his thoughts on what that does for the receiving room, right? And, of course, now you've got a little bit more guys. I think there's some general things, like I hate to tip my hand and give them time to prepare for everything, but you'll ask about an A.D. Mitchell and what's going on with that. I think there's a fair conversation if you start thinking about like topics, right? I think there's a fair conversation to be had about a Malik Murphy, this offseason. What kind of shot do you give him? Because there had to be a conversation, Catch, after the season to Malik to say, listen, in 2023, this is the reasons why it's worth you hanging around. Like we know the transfer portal's there, and it's not to, it just is what it is. It's its own beast at this moment. Guys get impatient. Had to be a conversation about 2023 and what that means for you. I'd be curious to see what his thoughts are on there. Cedric Baxter only being on campus for a couple of weeks, but what does that look like? What does he look like? And how does that kind of fit into your mix, of your room? And then, of course, asking, wanting to know, hey, is there anything else that you guys haven't addressed in the portal that you kind of would like to do maybe on the second go round? That'll give us a good idea. Because remember last year, Catch, it was the linebackers. And it ended up being the thing that at the end of the day, it ended up being a strength of the team, but it ended up being his biggest concern in the offseason. So what will be his concern in the offseason going forward? I think it would be very interesting to see where his mindset is into what you and I are, I think, fairly and accurately describing as kind of a big year for him in the program, especially if this is the last one in the SEC. I mean, in the Big 12 before they join the SEC. Yeah,
I mean, in a way, they've told us what they're looking for. I mean, whether they get Roberson or not, and I think they will. I mean, I think Texas at this point is shooting from the layup line, because I think he wants, if you're taking a visit the weekend before signing day and you're committed somewhere else and you didn't sign in the first window.
Yeah. Not good.
I mean,
not good.
It's not. It's telling. I think TCU knows. We know that Bo Davis made a run at that Mississippi defensive lineman last week. That the way that unfolded was kind of unfortunate for Texas, because the offer that Texas makes opens up the eyes to the in-state schools, which allows Mississippi State to offer. They get the kid in this weekend for a visit instead of Texas. But we know that Texas wants a defensive line. We know that Texas, if one's there, would have taken a defensive lineman in this recruiting class. You're probably always looking for defensive linemen. And then that edge position just screams. I wrote about it last night for my 10 thoughts from the weekend. It's more bare when you write down all the details than you think in your head, because they have recruited so hard the last couple of years at that position. But boy, when you talk it out, like who really is going to take that spot, it doesn't get better than Ethan Burke with 39 snaps this season. So, you could be hopeful, but there is something to be said. I had this question in my head about, like, if an Ovi Ogofu, who you already had, but is now no longer with you, he's at LSU. If you could find somebody like him into the portal, given the inexperience there's a conversation to be had that, yeah, maybe you would take someone to give you some kind of experience and some level of performance to lean on. So I think there are a few positions and wide receiver. We know that I've got it on pretty good authority that they would have taken 2 in the portal, in the early part of the portal, had they been able to get the right 2 guys that they wanted. AD Mitchell was one half of the puzzle. There's, I think, still some thought that they, by hook or crook, will still have another receiver on the roster by the time the season starts, or will they? Like, I think, again, there's a lot of interesting things about the Texas football program, certainly from a personnel standpoint, that will be fascinating to talk about on Wednesday when he meets with the media. This would be one of those. There's some weeks, if you were to say, hey, Alex, Jason, guys, pick a question. Let me see what your best question is for the coach. And who knows who has the best question, right? But some days, thinking of things to talk about in a press conference, they're harder to come by on some days more than others. I feel like I honestly might jump through my computer screen if I hear somebody ask some bullshit, completely irrelevant thing when there's so much to ask about. You really can't go wrong. You can ask about Arch. You can ask about all of the other freshmen. You can ask them about the idea of what it means to arrive early versus not showing up until the summer and not being with the coaches until the fall, knowing what that did to DJ Campbell and how, from a Cole Hudson versus DJ Campbell battle for playing time last year, that always stood out as the advantage that one player had over the other. There's all the things that we've already discussed. Like, it is like a buffet table, Anwar, of things that I think are interesting. And I guarantee you, I will be in the Slack channel cursing someone's name when we get some ridiculous question. And it's like, that's it. That's it. That's it. You don't get to talk to Sark for a couple of months, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
You've had weeks to sit on. Some you might want to ask the next time you talk to him. If someone comes with that weak ass stuff tomorrow or Wednesday, rather, I will curse them publicly.
I'm trying to think of what would be the question. I'm not going to say who. I'm trying to think of what the question would be that would make you jump through the screen. It's usually I feel like you have that moment at every Overreaction Monday. But so I'm not quite sure.
You can ask about Chris Jackson. There's so many things that you can ask about. So if someone wastes their question I will curse them.
Someone will ask him about the winter storm, right? Is that like, how's he getting used to the winter storm? Like any change? Like any?
I'm okay with. There's no holiday. I mean, I guess Valentine's Day is 2 weeks away. But there should be no, and I'm okay. You know what? I'm even okay if you're like, hey, Sark, the Oscars were nominated. If you're at the very end, if you want to sneak something, I'm talking about first 5 minutes of the press conference and someone asks something that wouldn't even make your top 25 of questions you'd want to ask.
I mean, I don't know if he's going to give first 5 minutes of heaters because it just all goes on.
You don't
to
need
like
heaters.
There's hand first.
I just think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about.
I mean, I agree, but you put this out there, and now it's made me think what the question will be.
There shouldn't be any. The fact that you're having to think so hard is why there shouldn't be any.
But there will be. I've covered this damn team and been a damn.
There'll probably be 5 on one. Like, we're talking about one. Like, I don't trust anybody.
Dude, yeah, that's man. I haven't missed a press conference, I believe, since I've been here. So we're talking about nearly 10 years. I mean, on average, it's been a while. He's gonna get something, man. It's a slow news week. So that people are going to be looking for that content. So a lot of people are going to show up on Wednesday. Oh yeah, oh yeah, be prepared. Be prepared to be amazed. I don't know what's going to be, but it's going to happen. Is there a, if you were there, this is your question for Sark today. You only get one.
I mean, I think the question that would serve the most good is to ask him about, in terms of roster building and acquiring talent before, because they can still go through the high school ranks. I mean, Bo Davis could have found that kid in April instead of when he did. And, they could still technically, they wanted to improve the kicking game, they go find some guy. But I'm curious, I think, what numbers they think they might have still available. What's the magic number? Do you think if you could find the right guys in the portal, do you think you have room for 2 or 3 or 4? Like, I think that I find that really interesting, because then where they place, and then I think in conjunction with that, where the priorities potentially for that. Again, it's hard not to look at the more and more you look at that edge spot vacated by Ovia Gofu, the more you realize, they got about 70 combined snaps at that position between all of the guys on the team. So not only are you dependent on somebody in game 1 or game week 2, you're going at Alabama, somebody's got to play that critical spot on defense. One of the 2 or 3 most critical spots and valuable spots in the country. I mean, you've got to have pass rushers. You got to have guys, and this is that spot for Texas. Are you comfortable with A, your starter having virtually no experience, and B, what about his backup? Everybody over there is brand new in terms of playing time. And I think it is, if you're shopping in the portal and you're talking about what is the thing that if you could close your eyes and wish for something to come true, what would it be? I think you'd be like, man, a guy that could be an instant starter at that position, the way we think Jalen Catalon can be an instant starter at safety. That would be like a dream come true. You know why I think that's important? Because then I think Steve Sarkeesian should break NCAA rules. I think they should tamper with some kid that's a bet. Like, tell me who the guy is, right? Like, there's got to be some guy from I'm going to write about this week. I'm going to do my homework. It's got to be somebody starting somewhere that you just find a way to, like, get to his parents, right? You have a high school coach or a friend or somebody so that you can stay in the gray area and not technically break any rules. Go up to those parents and go, yo, I know your kid's like 1,500 miles away from home. What if I told you I know about a potential situation that there would be an opportunity to start right away, and like their NIL cash is like really strong. Like, just when May rolls around, without breaking any rules, living in the gray area, I'd have somebody in the portal be like, and I don't care if people for 2 months were like, this kid's going to Texas. That's the word on the street. I don't care. I'm not going to even hide it. I need a starter in the portal, and by any means necessary, that's going to take place. That is what I would do if I was running the Texas football program.
Is there like a disclaimer that these views are those views of Jeff Ketchum and Jeff Ketchum alone, and not necessarily reflect?
I bet Rogue Shop would support this.
You said what?
I bet Richard would support this.
I don't know if they support breaking NCAA rules, but
that was tongue in cheek. What I'm really serious about is using back channels the way back channels get used in college. All you got to do is call a guy's agent. If we're being completely honest, have somebody call someone's agent and say, just so you know, You could make like $500K, FYI, if it happened.
I mean, the question, I get your point. The question, clearly from an open market perspective, right? Well, because, we were talking about the second transfer portal window that would open up later in the spring. The question really for me becomes, Catch, bringing in someone like outside, and I'll give you the example, the O'Shawn Mathis from last year. How much of an impact could he have made had he gone to Texas? Because we saw him go to Nebraska and we really never heard from him again. So is that better than, to your point, in Ethan Burke in his development and saying, okay, he's about ready. He's been in the system. He's been, he's being marinating and now he's ready to go, versus some of these other guys who, they'll come out for the check, but how good are they really? And again, Mathis, when I think of, and it's when I started thinking of, Mathis, or you talk about an Ovi, I think you want to get program changers. Ray Thornton also comes to mind. And I don't necessarily believe or seeing that. I'm not saying there won't be, but are those guys available to go? Like, that's the question mark. Are they out there willing? And then, of course, is that a better option than the guys you've already been grooming over the past, couple of years?
Okay, so first of all, I think one of the things about the O'Shawn Mathis situation that we need to acknowledge, it is a little bit of an elephant in the room with him, is that he had a bad season. 2 seasons before he left TCU, he was dope. Like, he was double-digit sack guy.
Yep.
I think that was a COVID year, and so he was just really good. In 2021, I'm just remembering this off the top of my head. I think he had 4 sacks and hadn't been the player there that TCU thought they had, and which is why he wasn't going pro and was looking to transfer. And so I only bring that up because he was a complete dud at Nebraska. I mean, it really was. They did not get their money's worth with him this year. But there were signs, and the kind of guy that I'm talking about tampering with.
Oh, boy.
There's another word. I don't know.
There's got to be a better word.
Wink, wink, through the grapevine communication, whatever. I don't know. Call it whatever you want to. Whatever makes it legal. And in the gray area that the NCAA is just not going to mess with. I'm talking about finding – let's put our shoes – let's go back 12 months. Who are the best 2 defensive linemen in the Big 12? That we know are coming back. It's Tyree Wilson with Texas Tech, and it's Big Frank at Kansas State. Those dudes did not make $500,000 last year in NIL. Now, they may not have an interest. Maybe those guys are just going to stay put no matter what. But if I'm the general manager at Texas, this is what I think they need. I've got a list. And I'm making sure that by any means necessary, it gets around to people that matter with kids like Tyree Wilson and big old Frank at Kansas State. Yo, we need a starter. Not sure you would have any interest at all, but just so you know, there's a cold $1 million for an All-America pass rusher. That's what – should something like that end up in the portal, 7 figures. And I'm waiting for one of the agents of these players to bite that hook. Because you know what? Jordan Addison did last year with Pittsburgh. That dude knew he was going to USC. He knew. And that guy had representation. And that guy's first communication and his representation's communication with USC didn't happen after he entered the portal. And that's all I'm saying is that in 2023, that game is being played. And however that game gets played,
Mhm.
Texas did it with A.D. Mitchell. That was out there. And part of that was because A.D. Mitchell's people were letting people know he wants to come closer to home. The word gets around. It can work both ways. The players and their agents get the word out. Hey, we're unhappy. We're going to end up in the portal. FYI, be prepared for it. It can work the other way too. We're looking for something in the portal, and it can be your guy, is what I would be letting indirectly agents know. And then that agent can talk to their client about whether or not they really want to turn down $750,000, which was kind of going around last year. Like dudes were getting paid through NIL. So
what does that say though, Kitch? If you do have to go that route, then what does that really say about coaches as far as talent developers are concerned? I mean, like what does that say about Bo Davis if you've got to be, man, we got to drop a mill on some guy because I know I've been working for this guy for the past couple of years, and I get sometimes.
Does it matter though?
I mean, there's got to be you got to be able to develop, right? I know.
What do we say about our guy at USC? What do we say about him when all you can do is transfer quarterbacks is your only way?
Yeah,
you can only do transfers like Baker and Kyler and Jalen Hurts and Caleb Williams. Although technically he would have started with him at Oklahoma, but nobody. Lincoln Riley just gets results, and nobody really stops to say, yeah, but he really has to have usually guys who've started elsewhere and have been pretty good players elsewhere. I just don't think people care. And all people look at is like, hey, he's badasses with quarterbacks. How it happens, I don't know. Like in this new age of college football team building, you are able to go out and go shopping in ways that didn't previously exist. And there's a lot of gray area out there. Territory's massive. Massive. Nick Saban's out there crying on these NIL streets when he was the first guy to brag about his quarterback making $1 million at SEC Media Day last year. He's been on the forefront of acquiring talent through sketchy He's at Alabama. Like they've never bought a player.
I told you.
What are we doing? All I'm saying is there's this big old gray area where Texas can operate and flex its muscle in ways that really didn't exist a couple of years ago. If it were me, that's what I'd be out there. I'd be in them streets making it rain.
The Saban complaint is just the thing I've been saying for a while, which is their issue is that the state of Alabama is not really producing that many millionaires every year. So it's going to be hard for them to keep up. I know where they are from a recruiting ranking standpoint right now, but it's hard to keep up with every single body. Before NIL, Reuben Owens probably ends up, over there. He doesn't say like, I'm going to go to a Louisville, which of course he obviously doesn't go to. I'm sure he gets a tattoo replaced. But it'll cover up at least. But that's his complaint. His complaint is, damn, I remember the good old days. Only had to pay a few people under the table. Now I got to pay. Everybody wants some money.
The loudest people on this, Anwar, to me are the projectors, right? Saw it a little bit last year at A&M with Jimbo when it was like, oh, clutch my pearls. How dare you suggest that money had anything to do with any of our guys? It's like,
thou protested too much.
Exactly. Oh, I think on the other side of the perspective, Deuce Robinson's an interesting case here, Anwar, in that I don't think the Longhorns are going to get him on signing day. I think he's going to go with Georgia. I think behind the scenes, Texas feels like it's been closer on this than I think the public has believed. But in the last week, when Deuce shut in-home visits down to only USC and Georgia, it tells a bit of a story. And I just think that it's the only recruitment we haven't talked about today. I mean, there's a Warren Roberson conversation, I suppose, that we can have about taking him away from TCU and what it might add to the team, although he's not a mid to early enroller guy. So it just feels like any of the high school kids that show up later in the summer, they just have a really – it's hard to think you could expect too much of them. Deuce might be the exception. By the way, I say Deuce, and people are convinced that I say douche. And I don't feel like the two things sound the same. Deuce. Like, it's not the same.
Say that again? That sounded pretty similar. Say that again.
Deuce.
Uh-huh.
Douche.
Yeah, you got to do heavier on the shush. Because the first time, before when you just said it, it sounded exactly the same. So then then the second time.
It's just deuce.
Yeah, with the second time when you said shush.
I can't help it that those two words are fairly close together. But I'm absolutely saying deuce.
Just call him DR.
Why can't I just say deuce? Here's the thing. If I was saying, I had to go take a deuce, nobody would go, sure sounds like Ketch just said, dude, I'm telling you. It's a weird one. It's deuce.
I don't know. It's a weird thing that every time you say his name, you get called out for that. So it's a weird.
I don't get it. I'm literally listening to myself say the word. There's no shh. There has to be a shh at the end of it for it to be douche. Otherwise, it's deuce. Maybe I needed emphasis the ooh, like deuce.
So I'll call him DR. So to make it easier for
Robinson.
us, DR is his nickname for me. That Mr. But anyway, it's interesting about that catch because, like you said, you starting to see. I've been reading other things and other public. Everyone seems to be trending him towards the Georgia situation, which makes all the sense in the world. No one's going to be mad at him for going there. Like what bad decision are you making in life when you go to a team that wins coming off a national championship?
And Brock Bowers got one season left, and there are a lot worse things in the world than to be able to tell a kid, we're going to use you just like we use Brock.
Yeah.
And it'll be seamless. You'll play a bunch as a freshman, but literally in year 2, that's you. Number one guy in the country for 2 years. I get it. If and when that kid picks Georgia, there's not one part of that Anwar that will make you go, huh?
No.
Why did he do that?
And that's what makes the signing day so interesting, Catch. But both of the guys who are in contention, if the Texas loses out on both, and we're just not talking about anyone that Texas signed, it's not the end of the world to me. I won't look at it as a failure. I'm like, oh well, but you've done all right so far. So you've done good so far. Like it just kind of is what it is. So if he doesn't come, DR, and he goes to Georgia, I'll shoulder shrug it at that point and see. All right, well, you got another year of Jatavian Sanders. You've got some of the other guys that are behind him. Let's see what you can do as far as getting the most, out of those guys. Banks coaching those guys up, and then who else might be available, whether it's from a transfer portal perspective, where it might be something you consider and hope for better luck this year as far as getting someone as a tight end, because the Jaleel Billingsley experiment never really yielded much as far as for Texas is concerned. But yeah, that guy is good. But if he goes to Georgia, you just wish the man luck. But I won't look at the staff and think to myself like, damn, you guys messed up. You screwed the pooch. I'm just like, all right, kind of is what it is.
Yeah. And I think that that they'll likely finish this recruiting class with, I think, the tight end position not quite being. They signed two, but they didn't get Deuce. They didn't get a guy quite like that. Neither of the guys they signed, I think, are immediate impact guys. It really is a reminder of the premium at that position, and that what Texas has in Jatavion Sanders should not be taken for granted. And that guy's probably got one season left himself. It'll be hard taking All-America honors away from Brock Bowers, but if anybody can do it, Sanders can next year. I mean, he's ridiculously talented. That's what if you sign a guy who's a 5-star that can play tight end, like it can look like that. There's a world out there that when Jatavion Sanders is no longer on the roster for the Longhorns, they just stop using the tight end the way they use it. I mean, suddenly you'll have some guys that can help with the inline blocking, but there's nobody else on this roster that can do what Jatavion Sanders does. And there are very few guys in the country that can. And, you know, before he came to Texas, Sarkeesian wasn't really a guy that used a tight end a lot, didn't use it a lot at Alabama. But when you got difference makers, NFL guys, you'll find a way to use them. I think, you know, it's just no guarantee that what you'll have next is a potential high-level NFL talent. I think that is what DR brought potentially to the table. It's what Georgia wildly might be able to pull off, right? You lose a Brock Bowers, and then it's like Texas at the quarterback position talking about, you know, if Quinn Ewers had the big season this year and then one more year, and then you go to Arch Manning, who gets that kind of handoff, that kind of on paper seamless exchange? They're very rare in instances like that. And, you know, we may be seeing it at Texas with Bijan Robinson. Maybe Cedric Baxter is that level of guy. But the thing about DR that stands out the most to me is that there's nobody else really this year like him. He was kind of that guy. Now, the Pimpton kid that was committed to Vanderbilt that ends up flipping to LSU and not going to Texas, he would have been a strong number 2, Damarian Pimpton. But I just don't know. In all, there weren't many guys across the country this year that made me think that they could be a guy that replaces Sanders. And that's one of the things that Texas will, one way or the other, either they'll find it or they'll just not pretend that they have it. And you'll see another receiver on the field in those situations and not Sanders basically playing the whole game.
I have a question for you, Catch. It's kind of been in my brain for a while here as we've been talking. When you look at the 2023 rankings, and I can go back to the Sanders things and address it, but I'm just kind of curious. If Texas sits at number 3 at this moment, is there any chance that they lose that spot on Wednesday? Is there anything from a math perspective that could happen that they drop out of 3? And go down? I mean, I just asked it more so because that's your wheelhouse, and I don't think I've ever really have taken the time to figure out the
at it. I remember on signing day, it didn't feel like, yeah, they have a pretty big lead on Ohio State.
Okay.
And the thing is, there are just not that many difference makers left that could move the needle in recruiting. If I go look at the top, there's not a single unsigned guy in the national top 18. So you got that kid Cormani McClain that flipped over to Colorado from Miami.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only 5-star along with Deuce. They're the only guys. And then there's a kid named Nichols Harbor, who's a tight end that moved in to 5-star range. But of the top 32 guys in the country, only 3 of them are uncommitted and haven't signed.
Okay.
Ironically, the top 2 tight ends in the country are 2 of those 3. But so the long story short of that, again, is there aren't and by the way, this Nichols Harbor kid, a lot of people are predicting that he's going to go. Let's see. I've seen a Maryland, an Oregon, and a South Carolina future cast. Most recent one, Maryland. there's nobody available that would allow, I think, Ohio State to catch Texas. Consequently, I don't think there's really room for Texas. I guess if you got, I mean, not even Deuce would catch Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So no.
Now,
interesting question, but no.
So if DR went to Georgia, does that give Georgia the potential advantage over Alabama?
I don't think so. It'll be very close.
Okay.
They're 142 points behind Alabama. I don't know that he would give them that much, but it'll end up being really close. Alabama has 5 stars in their class. Georgia would have 4. So 10 of the, or if they get that kid, 9 of the top 32 players in the country are going to those 2 schools. Just kind of wild. And you know, there's just Oklahoma had 3 5 stars this year, which I think, man, you got to give Brent Venables a lot of credit, because the number of schools in the entire country that have multiple 5 stars, Alabama 5, Georgia 3, Texas 3, Oklahoma 3, Ohio State 2, Oklahoma 2, Miami, or excuse me, not Oklahoma 2, Miami 2, USC 2. And that's it. Like, it just doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, I mentioned it on the modcast that you weren't on, so it must have been last week potentially. I talked about the where Oklahoma was, or maybe it's the week before, whatever what the last one was on. But I was very careful. I was like, Jason, I want to ask you a question about Venables and the 5 stars and everybody are recruiting. But I didn't ask him a follow-up question just because I didn't want to piss off Texas fans. You
don't want to get canceled?
Yeah, so I was like, I just want to put this out there. I want to ask the question, and I just want to get out of this. It's like a double Dutch thing, right? I just get in, do my little thing, get out. So I will say this. I did not see that coming from that staff, especially after the Texas OU game. I thought that they were dead in the water. I ended up being dead wrong about Venables. All the jokes that I may have made about, was it blowing and going, the fire hose being inserted in the mouth, like all that weird quote that he had at Big 12 Media Days, which I still don't really think I understand. At the end of the day, they did pull off a really good recruiting job. I'm not gonna can't deny him that.
I'm really impressed with what Venables has done. You know, I did a thing this weekend where there's one of the nerdiest things I've ever done on War. Jason and I were talking behind the scenes like a month ago, and we were bitching about the fact that not all of the schools in the Rivals network do a good job of putting high school offers in whenever they're in. So the database isn't quite as updated. For instance, our A&M guys need to do a better job of that. I mean, just put your offers in. So this weekend, I took basically the top 100 guys in the state of Texas, and I went in one by one, and I searched every story ever written about them, along with all of their, like, 2 years of social media for all 100 kids, to search for all of the visits that they've taken. And one of the things I learned in doing that is that Oklahoma has very quietly done a great job of getting a lot of guys on campus. So forget about 2023, where they've got the 3 5-star guys, right? And they're going to finish, they're number 6 right now in the country, just behind LSU. I mean, if they got another guy, they could definitely catch LSU and finish in the Rivals top 5. When you start talking about 2024 and 2025, both Texas and Oklahoma are doing great jobs of getting these guys on campus over and over and over again. And I think it's something about Venables that people don't know about, that from an infrastructure standpoint, from talent acquisition, he's doing a great job with the younger difference makers of getting them on campus. There's a kid out of Melissa, Texas, probably the second best pass rusher in the state, named Nigel Smith. They've had that kid on campus 6 times in the last year. And it doesn't get written about, but these are the things that towards the end of recruitments end up making a big difference. You can go through the top 20 kids in the state, see which kids have visited Oklahoma 5 times and no other school more than once, and you know who they're going to get. Consequently, if you're a Texas fan, what I would, to keep that from sounding like I'm, because I don't think Brent Venables is a good head coach, but I think he's got the recruiting thing figured out. Sarkeesian in Texas also very good in that department. They're doing a great job of getting these guys that they're targeting on campus repeatedly, and I think that hard work will pay off this year. You know, I think you can make a case that Sarkeesian in-state is best prepared this year than in either of the first 2 years, because he's really had a chance to put the legwork in that he couldn't in those early classes because other schools had been able to develop those relationships between 12 and 24 months longer than Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good point as far as Oklahoma's concerned. And what he's been able to do from a recruiting perspective. And then, obviously you see Sarkeesian kind of catching his groove. But, I think, one of the big differences, I think we knew Sarkeesian was a good recruiter like that. I don't think that's ever been the thing that we've gone and questioned to ourselves, like, what in the hell is happening here? Like, I think that was probably the thing you expected the most at this point, was like, okay, that's the thing you expected him to be good at. And the thing that you were unsure what he would be good at would be the overall record of the team. That's the thing that we're still, the component that we're waiting on, at some point. I know I've received a lot of jokes about Onward, how many 5 stars did it take to beat TCU? Like, that's been a running thing, obviously, for guys who have been joking with me over that. But, I'm still will say, Catch, from a talent acquisition standpoint, I love it. It's great. Be number 5 last year, I think it was 3, this year. I still need to see that thing translate, though, catch into wins during the season and get into a Big 12 championship game. It becomes a really empty prize for me when when you hold up this trophy of, hey, look where our recruiting rankings were. Cool. Then how about this? Let's not go to the Alamo Bowl this year. How about that? That'll be great. Can I meet my people in Arlington the first week of December, and we can have a party down there because Texas is playing in a Big 12 championship game? Can we have a bowl game that's actually outside of the state? Because I've done one, a bowl game outside of the state, it just, unless you're talking about, some sort of Cotton Bowl or something to that effect, something but more meaningful stuff, to me, Catch, it's got to start to translate. It's got to start to carry over. It's like, I think it goes back to a little bit, and, we're joking a little bit before where you were talking about getting defensive linemen, this and that. And I'm like, man, what more do y'all want? What more do you need? You've got it. It's right here. You've got the guys in front of you. Can you just win? Like, can we win when it counts? Or is it just going to be like, hey, do your little, home run trot in December and another trot in February, and then the next thing you know, we're in season, and we're like, ooh, well, we're playing for this, we're playing for that. Well, those guys have seniors on that team. Well, damn, Texas got seniors too. I mean, I am top. My overreaction Monday is, Catch, here we go. You kind of went me up and down the rabbit hole. Great. Take your victory lap this week, Sarkeesian, but can you take a victory lap in December? That's what matters most to me. Your victory lap on Wednesday will be great, well-deserved. Enjoy it. Please take a victory lap after the season. That's what will mean the most, I think, to Texas fans. That's what will impress me. Not the victory. Charlie took victory laps. Tom took victory laps in recruiting. Sarkeesian, I want to take a victory lap. Take a victory lap after winning the Big 12 title. That's what I want to see. Sorry.
No comment. Because if I engage with you on that, 45 more minutes. That needs to be a different video. But obviously, you and I are on the same page. I mean, we're getting ready to hit the offseason. I think there will be a lot of videos where the sentiment is shared. That I really think this will enter this season. There will be a sense of urgency of, it's been a long time since Texas hoisted a trophy. If they don't do it in 2020, and I mean the kind of trophy that when recruits come to campus, you have them take photos of.
Mm-hmm.
Conference championships, major bowl games, certainly. I won't even get necessarily. I won't even say national championship. That's such a many steps down the road. From can you matter in December to can you win it all? It just feels like a huge leap. But yeah, I think everybody gets it. I think smart football fans know it doesn't get easier the moment Texas goes into the SEC. And, the task for Texas at that point very immediately is don't get sucked into the middle class of the SEC, because Georgia matters and Alabama matters and LSU matters. I think they've proven, but like A&M's been trying to get out of it for a long time, and it's hard.
That side sucked them in last year. That side sucked them in last year and drowned them.
That's why the playoff, once it expands to 12, is so important, because it's going to change the parameters for which A&M no longer has to say, God, got to win the SEC. The thing to do will be to make the playoff. And suddenly it's not impossible anymore, because Texas is going to be entering the SEC at a time when Georgia and Alabama are at historically high peaks. It's not insulting that Florida and Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Tennessee, it's not insulting that those guys can't beat Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah.
It's like, Tennessee was only the third best team in the SEC this year. Like, that's kind of as high as they can get, barring some rare anomaly. But moving forward, the goal will be to get into the top 12. And if you can't do that, I think guys are going to lose their jobs even faster than before. Yeah, 4 years, never again. You got 3 to get into the top 12. And if you're not doing that, we really are the leftovers at that point.
Because you're basically you're a 2-loss team, and if you're in the top 12, right? I mean,
yes.
That's so basically you're getting the mulligan of 2 losses, which means that at that point you're at 3 or 4 and you can't get in. That people ain't gonna like that.
It's weird, because it's not like Texas has really been close to a top 12.
Yeah.
Certainly since you've been here, but really going back to 2009, Texas's highest finishes are in that 2018 season when they beat LSU in the Sugar Bowl. And then in 2020, the year that Sarkeesian got fired, they were like 19th, I think, in the country in the final rankings. There haven't been seasons where it gets better than that, but that will be the goal. And I'm telling you, it'll be that way everywhere. You got 3 years, man, because we can't be waiting around not getting into the playoff. If you're not in the playoffs, because, one of the weird things about college football right now is you can kind of shrug your shoulders about this Alabama-Georgia thing. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows that those two teams are kind of hogging the big, and they may still do that. But the moment it expands to 12 annually, you can be in the playoffs, and the way your program is thought about, I think, will be different on it. You'll be able to recruit nationally if you're in the playoffs every year, where if you're not, guys are going to go to the teams that play in the playoffs. And the thing is, now Alabama and Georgia, it feels like every year they're kind of in. even in a year when one of them doesn't make it, like Alabama this year. I think that the stakes very quickly are going to change for Sarkeesian, but the goals will be realistic. It's not like you have to take down Alabama and Georgia in the future. I think that's really important because Texas currently lives in a world where if you don't win the championship in the Big 12, it's a bad year. And the reason for that is, what the hell else is there if you don't?
Yeah.
But a 12-team playoff previously means your aim is completely different than it is right now, and it's a more obtainable deal. But if you're Texas, the moment you enter, you don't want to be one of these teams that can't get above 7-5, 8-4.
But the thing is, at this point, Catch, I think it's being placed on the tee for Sarkeesian, which is, hey, this is the last year in the Big 12. Just get the team to a championship game. Like, be great to win it, but at least get the team there, right? At least people can tell themselves, all right, well, that's been something that Sarkeesian, you can say, has been an on-the-field accomplishment, something that's noteworthy. You got to the Big 12 title game in 2023. Because then at that point, when you talk about 2024, now if you're SEC, now you're telling yourself, like, I mean, you're going to year 4. If he doesn't do it in 2023, you're going into year 4, like, we got a lot to speak on, a lot of accomplishments here. And then if you don't do it in 2024, I think everyone's like throws their hands up at that point. So, the window, I think the window's there. The runway is obviously there. The opportunity is there. But is now, I think he's at the point where he's got to start checking boxes on the field. And, every coach gets, at Texas, it gets measured by not only big wins, but the big accomplishments. It's time to start checking boxes. And right now, there haven't been any boxes for him to really check. I mean, the OU win is pretty good. It was obviously a great moment. But then you kind of you kind of lose it a little bit with, down the line where, you still finish with, 8 regular season wins. So, it's time.
Well, by the end of year 3, Tom Herman had won 3 bowl games, 1 major bowl game, and played in 1 Big 12 championship. Sarkeesian, I mean, you really can start keeping score after 3 years. You've officially been out of school for a while. Yeah. And, at this point, he really has to have a great year this year so that Texas can't – you can say all you want to about the recruiting and where it was when Herman left and how well it's been Sarkeesian. I'm not saying that Sarkeesian wasn't the move to make or that this isn't that conversation. What I'm saying is, after 3 years, you want to be able to look back and say that at least the results were as good as Herman's. If they're not, you made a bad hire. Because you didn't fire Tom Herman to hire somebody to do worse than them on the field. And that's why this year's big, because he's gotten a couple of mulligans. We've gotten to the point now where Texas fans are quite comfortable explaining away 5 and 7 and why that happened and why Tom Herman is to blame. And, even this year, it's like, well, 8 and 5, and people will explain it away. At some point, though, the record is the record. And that is ultimately how coaches get remembered. You're remembered by your record. And it's important, moving forward. And I'm not, you and I aren't saying anything controversial. No. We're not saying, this isn't he's going to be on the hot seat. No, this is just about you got to win some games. Eventually, you do have to win games. And I think with year 3 with Sark, we're at that point. Hey, I want to remind everybody, do us a solid real quick. While we've got you, hit that thumbs up button. Just do it right now. Hit the thumbs up button. Give us a like. Subscribe if you haven't done that. Before we go on, War, I feel like we have to talk about the one thing that I don't think we've avoided it on purpose, but we haven't even mentioned it through an hour. And I feel like we kind of have to.
I'm ready. I know we're going.
Joseph Osai.
Yeah.
And what happened last night in the AFC Championship game. Damn, dude, that was hard. I don't personally know Joseph Osai. I never, I didn't cover him day in and day out like you would have. while he was there. And yet I found it really hard to watch just as a human being to see him in a position where he's crying, sobbing on the sidelines because he feels like he cost his team a chance to the Super Bowl. And he may very well have done that. Like, you don't ever say that one play wins or loses a game, but it was a critical moment in the game that turned maybe a 50, 60-yard field goal into something very makeable when, you know, you can say, well, the Chiefs still had 8 seconds and they might have been able to complete a pass, and that, you know, there's a couple of steps that they would have then had to do to get into the position to do what it is they ultimately did. God, it was hard to watch. I felt really bad. It was the right call, but man, I never wish that on anybody.
Man, so there's a couple of things that sucked about it. First of all, that it happened, you know, obviously, and you know, it's the thing that what sucks is that he was playing a good game up until that. Like, it wasn't like he was playing poorly, like he was doing fine, you know, he's doing what he was doing. It was disruptive, all those kind of things. And that momentary lapse at the, you know, the worst moment occurs, you know, and so, you know, you see him, he's over there sobbing, feeling horrific. Then you see his teammate. You saw the video of this Jermaine Pratt. Did you see that? That guy being trashed, that, you know, yelling as they're going into the locker room about, like, why do you do that, this and that. And I'm like, not really. And this is the same guy that, if you saw the videos, this is the same guy who got trucked on a 15-yard run around like the 4-minute mark, literally got ran over, couldn't, like, it didn't wrap up a guy that extends a drive, but then he's complaining about a teammate, which, you know, you can't do that. Then, you know, then you see Osai in the locker room with one of his teammates around him. He's still upset. And one of his teammates kind of has to almost kind of step in with the media to kind of be like, you know, come on. All right, don't do that question. Like, you just, he's like, come on, let's just go. Let's get out of here. You know, Sai's there. I mean, I give him credit. He's answering the questions longer than I would have. I can tell you that much. Like, I would have given you like one or two, and they're like, hey, man, I'm not in the mood for this, so I'm out. I wouldn't stand there and let some freaking Poindexter.
It felt like Joseph Osai felt like he had to be a pinata for the media, and it was like, no, dude, you don't. Really?
No, you don't. Like, you can answer a couple, and then you could just say, like, hey, man, I'm out. You know, I just, you know, whatever. And I know he wanted to be accountable. I just feel bad, you know, just like, you don't want that to be the thing that defines you. You don't want that to be your Leon Lett moment, right? But it ends up being the thing that, you know, unfortunately, until he overcomes that, it's going to be the thing that people always think about. They always will raise. I mean, if you're him, you just got to hope KC doesn't, you know, go to this, you know, win it all, right? Because that becomes even like a little bit more of a dagger. But I feel bad for Osai. I really, really do.
I've had a lot of Texas fans today onward tell me, no big deal. In a year from now, no one will remember that play. And it's like, either A, these people aren't Cowboy fans, or B, they don't know Cowboy fans. So you can't, if you're not A, you have to be B, right? If you're a Texas fan, you know people that root for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's not pretend, because I've just had people today that be like, Bengals fans aren't going to remember that. And it's like, okay, the Dez Bryant catch that was or wasn't against the Packers, the Tony Romo muff snap on the field goal against Seattle, Patrick Creighton in 2007. There's like 10 of these.
That's just for your organization. Imagine being a Jets fan, and every time imagine being a Jets fan, and that someone says the term butt fumble. Like,
yes, like, it's just. No, I can't remember in the history of the NFL where a trip to the Super Bowl was partially created by a play in the last seconds of a game that set up a short field goal. Or, I mean, anything under 50 at this point in the NFL that's like 80%. Like, dudes are automatic. And unless you're the Cowboys kicker going for an extra point, at which point you flip that upside down. Yeah, I mean, I feel bad because the NFL, I think more than any sport, fan bases remember that play that they're convinced cost their team the shot. And you're Cincinnati, man. You're 8 seconds away from overtime and that happened. Yeah, they're going to kind of remember that. And it's not fair to Joseph Osai. I mean, there's still a scenario there where they might still make the field goal, whether or not that play happens or not. But we can't be naive as to say it will be like the Leon Lett thing, like Joseph Osai will now have to have one hell of a career in order to keep that from being the thing that mainstream football fans think of when you say his name, not Texas Longhorn fans. Right, we get it. You're going to remember that Oklahoma State performance for the rest of your life. The mainstream football fan, that was a big deal. And, you know, I hope he handles it okay. Some guys, that can be a really traumatic thing to happen to a guy. I mean, there are just too many examples of huge moments like that weighing on guys in unhealthy ways. He's such a good dude. I just, you know, I hope he can feel compassion today from those around him and like move past this thing because it haunts some guys if you're not careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can I do one more thing to stir it up in the last
Stir it up.
seconds?
I love it when we stir it up on the way out.
Yeah, I'm gonna stir it up, and this is gonna stir you up as well. Okay, this is gonna be a trigger for a lot. All right, allow me to go through it, and you'll know where I'm going. Right?
I feel like I already do, but go ahead.
Okay, so we're talking about the Super Bowl, right? We're talking about that type of stuff. I'm gonna go to 2016. Shea Patterson, Malik Henry, Jarrett, and I cannot pronounce his last name, Khalil Tate at number 4, Shane Buechele at number 5, Max Gilliam at number 6, Devin Monster at number 7, Zerrick Cooper at number 8, Jalen Hurts at number 9, Skylar Thompson at number 10. Can I go 2014? Deshaun Watson at number 1, fair. Will Grier at number 2, Trayon Harris at number 3, Gerard Hurd at number 4, Brandon Harris, who's at the University of Texas right now, at number 5, Clayton Thorson at number 6, William Crest. I won't continue going. I will just say Patrick Mahomes at number 12. We need to have a recruiting rankings conversation at some point this week before the Super Bowl, something, because I know you want to say, you know, like sometimes the thing I noticed in recruiting and predictions, everyone loves to talk about when they get it right. Oh, you know, the guy I discovered, the guy I wrote about, you remember my rankings? Boy, it seems like some people got this one wrong. By some, I mean a lot.
I mean, I don't know what you want me to tell you because nobody reviews their work and goes back and looks at hits and misses more than I do. And, you know, when you look at Jalen Hurts, he is the statistical anomaly that hits. And kind of the same for Patrick Mahomes. The Patrick, you know, both of them are so interesting. I think one of the things I planned on writing about, and I don't know if or when I'll still do it, but I've had this thought for a couple of weeks now. It's kind of amazing that Texas played those guys. You know, like Patrick Mahomes is going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks that have ever played the sport. And I just don't, I never, when he was in college, we didn't think that.
No.
It's just, Burrow falls into that category as well. It's one of the things that made me think about this was that, they played Joe Burrow is going to go down. Joe Burrow is going to be an NFL Hall of Famer unless something tragic happens, right? Some horrible injury is the only thing keeping that guy from being an NFL Hall of Famer in the making. It's amazing that we've had a chance to see these guys up close, and our memories of who they were in games against Texas are wild. Joe Burrow looked like that dude. Jalen Hurts was a guy that people on Orangebloods argued about for over a year about whether he was even capable of being good.
Mm-hmm.
That dude caught strays from Texas fans who thought, oh, yeah, I'm glad that guy went to Oklahoma. He's going to screw them up. Like, that happened. Patrick Mahomes had a career.
He got benched at Alabama. That's what he was. Yeah.
And Patrick Mahomes was a guy that even at his best at Texas Tech, I never once thought to myself, this guy's going to be an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback, let alone Mahomes. Mahomes is really setting himself up to have a career where at the end of it, it's him and Brady. And perhaps you just can't catch Brady, right? Because he's now done the Michael Jordan thing where it's just, he has a resume that almost looks impossible to catch. But 5 straight, he's been an NFL quarterback for 5 years. He's been to the AFC Championship game as a starter in every year. I mean, not even Tom Brady did that. He's getting ready to win multiple. He's already had multiple MVPs about to be on his resume. Now you are pointing to the recruiting piece of that, and that, nobody saw Mahomes coming as a prospect at all. All I can tell you is like statistical anomalies occur, and he is a 1 in a million. As a recruit, he's like a 1 in 10 guy. But in terms of what he is and what he's become, he wasn't the number 1 pick in the draft. He just wasn't expected to be this. And that he's this, like watching last night just blew my mind. That guy, if he wins the Super Bowl, this will be one of the all-time people will remember that injury in the second round of the playoffs and how his leg bent and how it looked like he wasn't going to be able to walk. I'm at a point with Mahomes where I just can't believe how good he is. It's dawning on me how historically important in the history of the NFL he is. He gets a Super Bowl over the Eagles in a couple of weeks, and you got to start talking about Patrick Mahomes being one of the greatest players you and I have ever covered professionally.
Yeah.
It's not a long list beyond that, because he may finish his career as the number 2 quarterback of all time. I mean, next 5 years of his career, if he adds a couple more MVPs, a couple more Super Bowls, like that's what we're talking about. I don't have enough praise in the world to give to Patrick Mahomes. I'm dumbfounded by what he's been able to accomplish versus who I thought he was as a college football player.
You had him number 80 on your LSR.
Yep.
As I look it up. It's not a bash session, right? We're just having a conversation.
I've posted those rankings in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, see.
Again, no one looks at what they do from a history standpoint more than I do. And the thing is, rivals actually had Mahomes rated higher than anybody else.
Huh. And it still wasn't high enough, clearly, in hindsight, right?
Well, in hindsight, he should have been the number 1 player in the country. In hindsight, he should be like, and it's funny because that Cliff Kingsbury had that guy in college and couldn't win.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not that Mahomes was a chump. It's just that it never once crossed my mind while we were watching Patrick Mahomes that we were watching what would eventually become. He's otherworldly. He's legitimately unlike any NFL player any of us have ever seen. That's not to say he's better, but he falls into the category of Aaron Rodgers, where he does things that when I watch him play, where it's like, oh, I haven't seen a guy do that before. And it's different than Aaron Rodgers, but we're almost at a point with Patrick Mahomes where there's nothing he can do on the field that surprises me.
Oh, yeah.
Left-handed pass between the legs, 40 yards down the field, whatever.
Headbutt it, like whatever he wants to do. It just, yeah.
There's nothing he can do at this point that surprises me. It's like, oh, no, he jumped off the wrong foot and threw a laser 30 yards down the field. Of course he did. On basically a broken foot. Of course he did.
Yeah, no, he is definitely special. Like I said, it was just worth repeating because I know it's not a catch thing, right? I'm talking from an overall rankings thing. That's all it is. It wasn't like a come at you by any stretch of imagination. It is, like I said, I noticed in recruiting, there's always you always hear about the wins, and I'm always fascinated about the people who never talk about the L's. And I'm like, you'll see that in the draft, right? We'll see it in this upcoming draft that not just rivals, all of them will say, this is where I had these guys recruited coming out of high school, right? And they're like, oh, okay, well, that's good. You hit. You don't ever talk about the guys that you just missed on. I'm like, well, what about those guys? Like, what about the guys in the Super Bowl? Like, who is coming here and who will stand before us and fall on your recruiting sword and say, it was me, I got it wrong? It's like, no, I'm just going to talk about that one guy I got right. No, but accountability wants it to work both ways. That's all.
I literally am the guy who is unafraid. I'm trying to find it right now. I can't believe I can't find it right now because I did an article just recently on the rankings, the national rankings, and when it applied, my rankings to all the guys that were named on the All-Pro team from the state of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It is really interesting. It's a mixed bag. I mean, Lane Johnson's a perfect example. Lane Johnson's going to be an NFL Hall of Famer as a tackle. That guy was a 2-star quarterback prospect. It's, I think one of my favorite things about the Super Bowl is like the stories that come with it. Because some of these dudes have real stories, man, about how they have been able to get to the level that they've been able to get to. And in this case, I think both quarterbacks have interesting stories. It's a really interesting Super Bowl on paper. The Kelsey brothers playing against each other. Neither of those guys were prospects. So not only and these two guys, they might both make the NFL Hall of Fame. Just like the Shannon and Sterling Sharp. Like, these two guys came out of nowhere. Nowhere. I had to go back and look. I don't think Travis Kelce was ranked.
Damn.
These guys, that's the thing, man. The NFL, man, I could go all day ranting and raving about it. I hate that. Can I get one thing out of my system?
Yes.
The Eagles are going to the Super Bowl after having the easiest schedule in the NFL. And then they play Daniel Jones and Brock Purdy on the way to the Super Bowl. That hurts my soul.
Purdy for a little bit until he got hurt. And then he had Josh Johnson.
Every time the Cowboys get into the playoffs, up until really the last couple of years with the 49ers, I can't tell me how many years where it just feels like, oh, you ran into Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. Oh, Eli Manning did his Eli Manning. That the Eagles, that's the biggest cakewalk pathway in Super Bowl history. There's never been an easier path for any NFL team than Daniel Jones and what that they were playing Christian McCaffrey at quarterback at the end. Just it sucked to see the Eagles. Hey, sometimes you can't control who you play, right? Like it's not the Eagles' fault, but man, just once. I'd love to be like, well, the Cowboys got to the Super Bowl, and I'd love for people to say it doesn't count because I'm completely on by this stat that RJ Ochoa posted yesterday. Since the Cowboys last won the Super Bowl, the Eagles have been to 3 Super Bowls and 7 NFC championship games. The Cowboys have been to none. Nothing has ever made me feel like such an NFL fan chump like that. Why do we do it? Cowboy fans, why do we do it?
Here's what's worse. Can I just go ahead and I think make you feel even worse? Freaking Eagles have the number 10 pick in the upcoming draft.
They're a better run organization, Anwar.
Yeah, they got that 10 pick from the Saints. So they've got number 10. So people have talked about, Bijan and going to the Cowboys. Like your worst fear is that Philly grabs him at the number 10 spot. Like that's what you don't want to happen.
Hey, and Texas fans and Cowboy fans we're due for this. Because when Ricky Williams went into the draft in 98, there was tons of speculation that year that the Eagles were going to take Ricky. And instead they took Donovan McNabb. And Eagles fans wanted them to take Ricky Williams. So like 20 plus years ago, that Texas/Cowboys fan combo dodged the Eagles bullet with Ricky Williams. You can feel this Bijan thing coming a mile away. You just can't. Like, of course he's going to go to the Eagles. Of course that's going to happen.
Yeah, if that happens, once again, our sponsor is RogueShop.com.
On days like the Eagles go into the Super Bowl, that Orangebloods discount, promo code Orangebloods over on RogueShop.com will help you get through those days a little easier than they otherwise would. Anwar, let's wrap this bad boy up. You got anything? Any last final comment? I'm good.
I'm good. I don't know where the hell this winter storm thing came from. It's cold.
How cold is it supposed to be in Austin?
What is it?
Because they're talking about you might lose your power.
They said like the whatchamacallit, the not the cap power. My internet was potentially supposed to go out. They sent something like that, but it was pretty chilly. It's not bad.
Okay.
They passed one little last.
I didn't know if it was going to be, winter storm 23. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like Armageddon storms that we've seen in recent years that you thought you were avoiding once you moved from Detroit.
Yeah, and then we get snowed in for a week. They snowed in for a week because I don't have a shovel because I never thought to have a shovel as a Texan.
When you came to Orangebloods, I was like, go check out the average weather, man. You're going to love it. It's warm during the winter.
Yeah, if we replayed that whole conversation of, man, the weather here is so nice. They hired Charlie Strong and, you have a chance to cover a guy that might compete for a national champion. There was all eyes.
I did.
Then again, I introduced you to someone. I was like, hey, there's my wife. I might be with her forever. So there was lies everywhere.
You sit on a throne of lies. For myself and Anwar Richardson, the guys over at RogueShop.com, again, that promo code Orangebloods, use it. And Blake producing, thanks for hanging out with us on a Monday. We'll do this again throughout the week. You guys